All right. Well, all right. Well, hello, 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 everyone. You know what day it is, my favorite day because I can do this stuff on Monday. It's Monday night, Monday night, Monday night, and it is NCNW's Black Media Monday. I'm Siobhan Arline Bradley, President and CEO of NCNW, the National Council of Negro Women, founded by the one and only Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune. And let me just say, this is a show that I'm so proud of because our listening audience is jumping on Media Mondays because we get to elevate some of my favorite voices. Yes, Black excellence in media. I am excited for this because we have top media experts who will share their insights and strategies and also highlight the importance of, hear me, the Black press, our voices telling our stories by our people. And it's such a beautiful thing for me. And during this time of, yes, misinformation and disinformation, our community needs trusted resources. We need folks that we can go to. And we at NCNW, we believe it's our mission to bring trusted voices to you. And it's Monday, Monday, Monday. Ooh, we got a good one on this Monday. I am so proud of our fifth guest. This is our fifth iteration of this show. And this is going to be a great one because I have a three-time Midwest Emmy Award winning journalist, the 2025 Bush Fellow, and yes, founder of BLCK Black Press, whose reporting has placed her at the center of national, I want to say international conversations about press freedom, okay? Because it has been a global conversation by this awesome guest, and she was, hear me, only one of two reporters who were in the courtroom for the sentencing of Derek Chauvin, who, of course, we know murdered our brother George Floyd, with nearly 17 years of experience in commercial and nonprofit radio and television news. The one and only Georgia Fort has
Thank
distinguished
you.
herself as a thought leader in equitable journalism. I want you to hear the rundown because what I don't do is diminish the intros because I want the people to know
Thank
who we're
you.
talking about.
Thank
This
you.
sister in 2023 launched Here's the Truth. It's an independently produced television news program that earned 12 regional Emmy nominations and won three. Hello? Come on, she won three. Her work has been recognized by the National Association for Women in Business, the Minnesota Society of Professional Journalism, and the Minneapolis St. Paul Business Journal, which named her its 40 under 40 list. She was on that list. Her mission as a journalist is to change the narrative by amplifying truth, elevating diverse sources, and hear me, I'm a preacher, this is my favorite word, providing context. Come on, somebody. Context around social justice issues. She founded back in 2022 the nonprofit Center for Broadcast Journalism to increase representation in media all across the great state of Minnesota. And through her work, Sister Georgia Ford is building a next generation media ecosystem focused on expanding representation and creating sustainable models for independent journalism for the people in the front and the back. I want to introduce to some and present to others someone who I've recently got to learn more about, hear more from in many spaces that we're in. It's the one and the only Georgia Ford. Come on.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm so excited. Thank you for accepting this
Of
Media Monday
course. Of
opportunity.
course.
Now I gotta say this to you. I want to start personally because you don't even know this. I got to learn more about your work recently. And we're going to talk about what happened with your experience being arrested as a journalist, someone who's amplifying the voice of our people. But I realized in a lot of the narrative that people did not get a chance to know who this sister was, Sister Georgia Fort. And then all of a sudden, the world found out quickly who you are. So let me level set this conversation because I asked this question for every journalist that we have a chance to talk to. Talk to us about your journey. How did you even get into journalism?
Yeah, I started in radio. I
Did you?
Yeah, I was a college student and actually wanted to own radio station, which I do now. But I got an internship to really learn more about the business and ended up getting thrown on air and fell in love with having community conversations, being able to amplify voices, from our generation, from
Wow.
underserved communities.
Mhm.
But, when a girl got closer to 30, uh, it got harder, because a lot of the
Yeah.
radio work was centered around entertainment and celebrity gossip.
Come
And so
on.
as I matured, I just wanted to foster, and cultivate conversations that had a little more substance. When I started seeing how serious the attack on our community was, I
Yeah.
wanted to start to facilitate conversations that A, highlighted those issues, and B, centered solutions. And
Yes.
so through that kind of conviction that maybe I'm not doing what my purpose is, it
Mm.
moved me into news. And I quickly realized in my first few months being in news, being a multimedia journalist at a TV station in Columbus, Georgia,
Okay.
and I always tell people, multimedia journalist is just a fancy word for a reporter with their own camera. So I wasn't, you
Clarify
know,
for us,
I
Georgia.
wasn't lucky enough to get a cameraman. I had to be the cameraman and the reporter and the editor, and I had to do all the things. But
Right.
I am grateful that God allowed me to have that very humbling experience,
Mm.
because that
Mm.
is actually what paved the way for me to be able to own my own media company,
Wow.
because I knew how to film, because I knew how to edit, because I knew how to script, because I knew how to post the web, because I knew how to cultivate an audience online, because I had to do all of the things for someone else. I'm like, I could do all the things for myself. And
Yes.
so that's how I got into news. Was the trans Started in radio, transitioned into, journalism,
Mhm.
and then eventually went independent.
So now, are you from Minneapolis? What's home for you? Where'd you grow up?
I'm from St. Paul, which is the capital city.
Capital? You
Everybody
Cap
always
City or Cap City girl?
Everybody talks about Minneapolis all the time, and St. Paul, I mean, is right over the river. We're 10
Okay.
minutes away, 12 minutes away from Minneapolis, and so, it's a lot of people who live in St. Paul, work in Minneapolis, live in
Yeah.
Minneapolis, work in St. Paul. We're one community. We call ourselves the Twin Cities,
Right.
but I am from St. Paul. My businesses are headquartered in St. Paul,
Not
and
in Minneapolis, okay.
no, no, no. So I gotta rep.
Please rep for the home team. Please rep for the home team. Now, I love this because when I think about, your work, um, I wanna just jump right into the real thing because many people have been following what's been happening with ICE. And some people are not really aware. I wanna be very frank, like, this ICE thing has been confusing, particularly for people that are in our community, not understanding what it really means, for those of us who are of African descent, right? Whether we, are identified as African American or a person of African descent that has an ethnic connection to the continent and are living here in the United States of America. And I wanna tell you something. Your name circled fast, sis, after that arrest being reported on the news. I mean, I remember watching and just the fear. We had fear because we didn't know what was coming. I mean, what we've been seeing is a consistent, vitriol, visceral reaction to independent voice in this moment. And so when we saw you go through that, being arrested, and I want the listeners to hear me, for reporting the news. I don't wanna limit what we're saying. You were arrested because you reported the news, reported the facts, and then I have to say the emotion rang up for me. When I think about your family, I think about, like, people watching this, and I know this, our strongest weapon to fight civil rights is the black press. I mean, I believe it. I've said this in other spaces. The black press is our quintessential underground railroad, right? It is the place that we can activate to get the freedom. So why do you say is the black press a trusted source to fight misinformation and disinformation?
Well, I think that you touched on something that I talk about a lot. Um, there was a time in America
Yeah.
where the culture shifted significantly, and I would say that that was after the horrific murder of Emmett Till.
Oh,
But if you remember, it wasn't just the act of him being murdered that
Yes.
shifted the culture in this country. It was the fact that a photojournalist named David Jackson
Yes.
took a photo of his deceased body upon request of his brave mother.
Whew.
And David Jackson published that photo for the world to see, for
Right.
the world, for the nation to have to be confronted with
Yes.
the brutality it had been inflicting on especially young Black boys, right?
Yes.
And so that was a photo that shifted the culture, not a policy, not, anything that any elected official did. It was
Mhm.
a member of the Black press
Yes.
documenting the brutality and publishing it for the world to see.
Yeah.
And so for so long, the Black press has been something we have depended on when the world and when this country has not
Mhm.
just brutalized us, criminalized us, dehumanized us, and lynched us, but then
Yes.
denied us a pathway to justice in search for accountability to people who have done us wrong, and
Yeah.
then want to gaslight us as though we did something to incite the terror that's been inflicted on us. It has been the
Yeah.
Black press that has stepped in and said, hold on, wait a minute. Here are the facts.
Here are the
Here's
facts.
video evidence. Here's photo evidence. And to really make an archive of the record, to set the record straight. And
Yeah.
so I think, yes, the Black press in a lot of ways has and is our modern day Underground Railroad. And to your point about the misinformation, the world better wake up. We are in the middle of an information war.
We are.
AI images and AI videos are being presented as reality.
As
So
fact.
if society doesn't want to live in delusion,
Mhm.
then we have to protect the trusted sources that the few trusted sources that we have who are committed to amplifying truth even when truth comes with a cost.
That's right. That's right. And I want to say to the people that recall this moment, a lot of people were talking about Don Lemon, and shout out to Don. He has his own platform as well. So these are voices that we continuously hear. But it was for NCNW, we were tracking this to see that a Black man and a Black woman were going through this at the exact same time. And even the kind of coverage that you receive, right? This is why we wanted to really highlight the work that you're doing, because I think at the end of the day, the voices of Black women have got to be brought front and center. We have at NCNW been committed for now 90 years. We're 90 years old organization. And we understood that the role of Black women in these movement moments in every industry required us to have the right messaging. And it's Black women who are really front and center, creating space, creating content to help people understand factually what does this mean for us as Black women and as Black communities. And so this is why I think it's important. Now, tell me this, all of the oversight that we're seeing now from the current federal government, I want to really ask you, what is the importance of ensuring that the press is independent from government seal, government stamp, government overreach? Because I think that's an area right now. You, people use the word fake news because they heard it all the time, but not understanding that became
Mhm.
a movement.
Yeah.
And we're looking at fake news right now in many spaces, which is why NCNW is doing this kind of platform. Tell us, why do they need to be independent? What is so important about that to have the independence of the press?
Pointing back again to history, Watergate. If
Ooh,
you research what was uncovered by journalists,
yes,
uh, through Watergate, right? It was the misconduct and the corruption of key elected officials, right? It was journalists, and those were mainstream journalists, and that was a different time, but I share that as an example.
yeah, yeah,
What? It's a great example of the role in which journalism is supposed to play. Journalists are supposed to, amplify, expose, document, and so if the government has control over what the press can and can't do, what
hmm,
the press can publish, what the press can't say, uh, then we run the risk of something like Watergate happening. And then because the press is controlled by the government, the public never ends up knowing that Watergate happened because
Yes.
the elected officials who are doing the corruption are able to silence the press. And so the public, you don't have to like the media. You don't even have
Right.
to trust the media. But what you do have to understand is an attack on the press is not just an attack on journalists. It's an
Come
attack
on.
on the public's right to know. You have a right to know what is happening. You have a right to know the facts, and the trusted journalists who are still here, who exist to expose the truth, we are your conduit. We are your
Yes.
vehicle to get access to that information. But if I'm gonna be criminalized
Come
in
on.
the pursuit of trying to document the truth, trying to expose the truth,
Mhm.
then you'll never know what the truth is because the very people who are trying to criminalize me for it, obviously they're doing it for a reason, right? So
Absolutely.
what do you have to hide? What do you have to
Yeah.
hide?
Yeah. And I think this is why your experience personally makes such a difference for us because I will tell you, a lot of people are not really understanding what's happening in localities across the country. So you happen to be front and center of a national moment, well, a couple of national moments because you were in the room with Derek Chauvin, was convicted. You have been front and center in many spaces. Um, I'm going to ask you this question: what does the world need to know about Georgia Fort's work? What about your work makes you a unique perspective for Black media and Black media moments like this?
I think what a lot of people don't know about me is how
Yeah.
I became independent.
Oh,
I worked in mainstream media for a long time, and I got to see up close and personal how narratives get shaped about our people, how
yeah.
our stories get minimized to crime,
Yes.
and our brilliance and our creativity and our joy is not considered newsworthy. And so we hardly know that it's happening, and the rest of the world starts to just see us as this stereotype because all they keep
Right.
seeing is mugshots.
That's all they see.
And so I experienced this working in newsrooms, in mainstream media, and I remember even, like, covering a officer-involved shooting and the way that
Mhm.
started the first one I covered, and that's what we had to call it when we worked in mainstream media, right? But a
Officer
officer had
shootings.
shot a black man. In this case, he survived, but the thing that made the 5 o'clock news was the man's criminal history and not the 12 pages of complaints that I found about the officer for racial profiling specifically that was confirmed not just by the report I researched, but by two cops that worked with him. Um, and so it's not just about portraying or amplifying the truth. It's
Right.
also about the omission a certain information to shape a specific narrative. And so seeing this, having experienced this firsthand, it
Mhm.
that those experiences shaped my commitment to tell our stories and my commitment to change the narrative. And I would say the way I ended up independent, because people are like, "Oh, so, tell me why you chose to go independent." I'm like, "Well, I didn't exactly choose it." You know? And so
For
it's like
clarity,
and
right.
so it's like the way that I got there also instilled this determination. My last job, I had climbed my way up from multimedia journalist to weekend anchor to main anchor. I was co-anchoring a morning newscast, solo anchoring a new newscast that I also had to produce. So doing a
Wow.
lot of jobs and barely getting paid anything. And my
Right.
last big story that I did, Siobhan, in mainstream media was I got the chief of police in Duluth, Minnesota to sit down on camera
Mhm.
for the first time and talk about his family's role in the triple lynching that happened back in 1920. And so this
Wow.
is after the murder of Philando Castile, right around the time when the officer was found not guilty.
Mhm.
So it's fresh on everybody's minds in the state of Minnesota how are police going to repair relationships with the Black community? So this is all on this is the context, right? So I get him to agree to do the story. His great aunt, Irene Tuscan, who he had spent Christmases with and whatnot. It's his great aunt who
Yeah.
falsely accused these 4 Black circus workers of raping her, that incited this lynching and this mob that broke into the jail, got 3 of the 4 men out and hung them in downtown Duluth. And so I got him to talk about this. We do the story. He talks about how he is really committed to trying to change the narrative of his family's name because of this, right? And use his position to make the community better. That's his story. So we do a story. And 2 weeks later, I'm fired. But
What?
not for the story. Not for the story. No, no, they say it's because I'm not eligible for maternity leave. And so it's like
Out of here,
either
Georgia.
way, as a Black woman, I have to either accept that I got fired for telling stories about the Black community that make white folks uncomfortable, or I got
Yeah.
fired because I'm a woman having a baby. And so that, and then I try to be optimistic. I applied for every station in my hometown, and oddly, they were all hiring, and no one will hire me. I'm 10 years in, I got 2 Emmy nominations, but yet and still, because I serve on boards and I'm doing other work in the journalism space, I'm meeting
Uh-huh.
white students who are hired, and they're in college, no degree, no experience. So you can find a place for them. You can see their talent and make a
Wow.
commitment to invest in them and cultivate them and bring them along. But here I am 10 years in getting exclusive enterprise stories, and I'm not good enough. And so this was
Hmm.
2017, 2018. This is 2 years before George Floyd. So when
Yes.
George Floyd happens, here I am, this very experienced, talented reporter
Yes.
with no job, but I'm watching them get it wrong. And so I just said, "You know what? I don't need their permission to tell our stories."
That's
And
right.
so I just went out and I just started creating, documenting, capturing, putting together producing the same news packages that I used to have to produce as a multimedia journalist for the 5 o'clock newscast, just started producing it for Facebook. And it was a little embarrassing at
Yes.
first, but when I got access in the courtroom as an independent journalist and reached more than 20 million people and started doing more numbers than some of these outlets, then it was more than just cute. Then it was actually effective. Then it was impactful,
Come on.
and so much so that I think that it also made me a target, because
Yes, yes, yes.
you can't go over my head to my editor or to my boss or to the network I work for to silence me. And so
Mm.
how can you control independent voices? The only way that they can really do it is to weaponize the criminal justice system, try to weaponize the criminal justice system against us. And we're seeing that even with the few elected officials who have
Mm.
been standing up in their power, like I believe her name is McGyver. She
The Monica.
she
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
she's supposed to, she's responsible for conducting an oversight visit, and they ended up
Yes.
charging her for doing her job. Same thing, charging me for doing my job. So when we can't control you, because
Come
then
on.
we're gonna weaponize the criminal justice system against you to either try to stop you or to paralyze you in fear.
I think and this is our last two questions, but it's connected to what you're saying. And this is really around the weaponization of messaging, weaponization even of the images and leaders that are doing this work. As a Black media leader, as a journalist, as someone who understands this industry, what are we missing in the news right now that we need to be paying attention to? Like what is happening that I'm going to say it this way: the voter, right? The mom, the family that's listening to you right now, that's getting their news from voices like yours. What should we be paying attention to? Because I do think a lot of times we get aloof in these moments. We're caught up in everything. I mean, things are happening like crazy. There's war. There's crazy racism. There's all these intentional moments to continue to decrease the advancement of our people. But if I'm listening to you, Georgia, what would you tell your listener right now? Like, what do we need to be preparing ourselves for and paying attention to when it comes to the media?
I think the media is not conveying the state of emergency that our country is in.
I hear you. I hear you.
I think that the media is not conveying the urgency, and
Mhm.
I think that the media is not conveying the danger of the inaction of elected officials who are empowered to do something. Um, it's like as I'm saying it, I'm hearing like the special broadcast noise. We interrupt this programming, because there's a blip.
Emergency broadcast system.
Emergency broadcast. Where's the emergency broadcast? Because and here's the thing. This isn't just an opinion. Let me point you to the facts. We have evidence of more than 100 constitutional violations that have happened in the state of Minnesota just in the month of January. That's just one state. That's just 1 month,
Well,
right? So if that tells me one of two things. It tells me either there is a department that is not being held accountable for violating our constitution, or it
mhm.
tells me our constitution no longer has merit. So which one is it? Then
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
see this happening repeatedly and people's attention spans have been reduced to 60-second reels, I can't keep your attention long enough to communicate to you next week what ended up happening about those 100 constitutional violations. Was someone held accountable or not? And
That's
so now
right.
you done moved on to the next thing because now there's a war, and then now somebody else has been killed, and now the Epstein files, and now all of these different things. But at the very question I still have is, do we have a constitution? Because I think people are hearing, fascism and authoritarianism. And in our community, some people don't even know what that stuff means. And they're asking themselves, why should I even care?
Why do I
The thing about it is like, do you want your freedom? Do you want your
that part?
civil, human, and constitutional rights to be
Yeah.
upheld? What kind of America do you want to have? And so we're seeing the testing of boundaries on, especially, I would say, our constitutional rights right now. And it's left me to ask a very critical question as a Black woman. I'm not even 40 yet. And so this is all, even as a journalist, right? Like in your
Yeah.
experience, some of this stuff is even new for me. And so I'm like, well, whose job is it to enforce the Constitution? Right? We know if you
Yeah.
break a city law, if you break a state law, you're gonna be arrested by city cops, or if you break a state law, you'll be arrested by state troopers, or you might be arrested by the sheriff's department, right? So
Mhm.
that type, we're clear. We've had a lot of experiences of like covering that and understanding how those systems work, and who has responsibility in holding those agencies accountable when they violate our rights. Well,
Yeah.
now when you start operating on a federal level and violating constitutional rights, whose job is it to enforce the Constitution?
That's the
And so
question.
when we have 100 constitutional rights that are violated in a
Violated.
month, and now we have judges who are stepping up and stepping into their power and writing
Yes.
letters and
Yes.
issuing subpoenas for top federal officials that have to come into the court to be accountable. But if you don't have an arresting agency that's willing to enforce,
Like, how do you hold them
how
accountable?
do you
How do you
hold it
do it?
accountable? And so I think that it is, the silver, I always try to look for the silver lining. I think the silver lining is like you're hearing American citizens speak out so much about the pride that they have for our democracy and our
Yeah.
constitution. And you're seeing people stand up for it. But for me, and this is the last thing I'll say, going back to the media,
Mhm.
I am grateful. Now I accept what happened, and
Okay.
I don't say what happened to me with that job. I say what happened for me,
Come on
right?
for me.
Because what happened for me to be able to be in this position to
Yeah.
challenge the status quo in journalism, to speak more directly about the truth, especially the truth in our community, in a way I would never be able to do working for these mainstream media outlets, right? But here's the thing, in journalism, they teach you to be neutral, to be objective,
Yes.
to tell both sides of the story. But how can you be neutral about the dismantling of our democracy and our constitution, but yet still expect to be protected by it. You
That's
can't
the
have it
question.
both ways.
That's the
That's
question.
hypocritical. You can't be neutral about other everybody else's rights being violated, but then say, "Oh, but hey," like, do away with all the other constitutional amendments and even, every other part of the First Amendment, but, like, keep the part where it says protect the press. You don't get to do that. And so I'm engaging in so many conversations with colleagues in media and saying, "You guys are being silent while our Constitution is being challenged left and right, but you want to be able to be protected by that same constitution that's
Absolutely.
being dismantled." And so,
Absolutely.
tying it back to the media, I think that's the other piece that people are missing, and that it is also the media is a system. We're clear about the public safety system. We've seen our community take a stand about the need for reforms or the need for abolition, the
Yes.
need for change, the need for something different there. But there hasn't really been a serious move for media reforms, for journalism reforms that challenge the way in which newspapers back in the day, you talk about being objective and telling both sides and being neutral. Go back to the Tulsa Tribune's article that
The
incited
massacre.
the Tulsa massacre. It was a call to action. There was nothing neutral
Correct.
about their reporting. It was
That's
a
right.
call to they incited it, and there
They
was no
incited it.
reparation. There was no reparation. So don't sit here and talk about, "Oh, neutrality and objectivity," and then even the polarization of the theory of, like, "Oh, tell both sides." Well, yeah, like, there are some times where that makes sense,
Mhm.
but there are some times when the story's more nuanced than that, and there's actually
Mm.
6 or 7 sides. And then there's some times when there's just the truth,
And
and the
that's
other
it.
side of the truth is a lie,
Because there's
and so
truth and lie in this moment. That's
you're
right.
doing the public a disservice by amplifying the truth and the lie and then saying, "You figure it out." No, sometimes there's just the truth.
Well, I tell you this, you have given us some serious nuggets. I gotta ask the last question that every journalist has to answer, and you gotta finish this sentence. Black media excellence to me is
Mm, that's a great question. Black media excellence to me is you.
oh, man.
It's me. It's us.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is the legacy, the continuum, right? You talked about the founder of your
Oh,
organization, Mary McLeod Bethune, and so, to stand in that continuum, we are the living embodiment of that legacy of
mm.
excellence, and it is an honor and it is a responsibility. But that's how I would finish the sentence. I think it's you, I think it's me, I think it's us, and, I'm grateful to be a part of that legacy.
Well, not only are you a part of the legacy, Georgia, you are a prideful part of our hearts today.
Thank
We have
you.
such pride in what you have carried. This has not been easy. You have gone through a trial. And my pastoral side of my heart says,
Mm.
but for you, it had to be you for such a
For
time as this.
for such a time as no
It
weapon formed
had to
against
be
me
you.
will prosper.
Come on, none.
Listen.
And the intention was to take you out, and yet your
Mhm.
voice carries. Your voice is longer,
Yeah,
your voice is louder, your voice is consistent.
yeah.
And so I want to say on behalf of the Black Media Monday fans, the folks that have listened to us as we started this journey, because we realized that there was so much going on in the atmosphere around
Yeah,
media. People did not know who to trust.
yeah,
And it's our job, the organizations that have access to 38 national Black women's organizations. We're in
yep,
33 states. We're in 113 college campuses. It's our job to make sure they know who to listen to.
that's right.
Georgia Ford, you're one
Thank
of them.
thank
You
you.
are one of them. So for
You
joining us, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. For everybody that logs on to see us today. Boy, Black Media Monday never lets me down. If you know anyone who missed live tonight, you gotta make sure they catch the show. Now we have, you heard it, NCNW TV. I'm so proud of it. Anywhere you watch a podcast, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. I am so, so grateful to Georgia Fort for joining us on Black Media Monday because she is, you already know, Black Media Excellence. We want to thank you all. I'm signing off, Siobhan Arline Bradley, proud to be the president and CEO of NCNW and proud to be in that legacy of the birthright of Bethune. I am grateful for it. So good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us, Georgia Fort. We love you. We're so proud of you.
You
Keep
too.
pushing,
Thank
sis.
you. Thank you.
God bless you.
God bless you too.